What's up, everyone? Episode 19 of the Critical Strike podcast. Thank you so much for being here. Enrique Demore, Meg Hay, Tyler Esguerra, joined by the one, the only, the LPL's very own Dagda, here to break down RNG, who surprise representatives at MSI. We'll start there, but before we do that, how are you, man? And thank you so much for being here. I know it's late over there.
Oh yeah, no, it's good. I'm happy to be a part of it, and it's nice to kind of get a chance to chat a little bit about the LPL and RNG and that. So yeah, I'm happy to be a part of it, and yeah, doing good. Just finished the season, obviously, so taking some time to relax, go in and explore Shanghai a bit. So you're kind of bringing me back to reality here with this one, you know.
Well, I'm happy to hear that. Is it tomorrow yet where you are, or no?
No, it's 9 p.m. Well, just after.
Okay.
But yeah, it's not too bad. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And so yeah, you mentioned you get some time to relax. Are you casting any MSI or no? How is it like the remote setup or lack thereof from the Eastern cast?
We're still trying to figure it out. So basically we think that we should be all good for tech wise, and we're just trying to figure out the ins and outs of it all. So obviously it can be a bit messy with the firewall and all, but looks hopeful that we should be able to. We're just waiting to see exactly what that looks like.
Well, that's extremely exciting. And actually, before we dive in here, talk about RNG. What tell us a little bit about yourself and how someone from the Republic of Ireland found themselves in their late 20s in China, like on purpose.
Yeah, so it's a bit nuts, to be honest. Like, so I never really thought that the casting thing was ever going to be a job. I actually finished my degree in business, worked in a bank, and was just kind of doing this as a hobby. And I got to the point where I was like waking up, studying League of Legends on the bus into work, working from 8:30 till 5:30, studying League of Legends on the bus home. I'd get in the door at like 6:45 in the evening. I'd shove food into my face as fast as I could. I'd go live at 7, finish at 11, and then rinse and repeat.
Sheesh.
Like, that was my life. It was just like, so it got to the stage where I was like, okay, cool. This is killing me. I haven't had a weekend off. I've been sick in work a lot, so then I could like fly to an event somewhere to do something or whatever, because I'd used up all my holiday days. So it got to a stage where I was like, look, I'm making money off of the casting. I'm killing myself in the bank. I was like, look, it popped up as well that the bank was making people redundant. And I was like, look, I'll take the shot, I'll take the money, and I'll see if I can do this for a year or two. And after the first year, it went terribly. It was absolutely awful. I made no money. It was like nobody wanted me. And eventually then I got very lucky that the LPL did pick me up. Because I basically had given myself a deadline of, hey, look, if I don't get anything within the next 6 months, I'm gone. And then 2 months later, the LPL was like, hey, why don't you come over? Ooh, so I got very, very lucky with that. And since then, I've been a part of the LPL. So guys have been absolutely wonderful to work with. Especially the likes of like Clement and Hysterics when we first came over. The lads were godsends, like making sure that we were all set up and well and running in China, helping us find apartments and just making sure we're all good. So yeah, been well kept, taken care of at least since then. But yeah, it's been a bit of a crazy ride to go from like, hey, I'm in finance to, hey, I've been halfway across the world casting League of Legends.
I feel like that's a story that we hear across all of esports. We start in such a different place, and then we just kind of realize, oh, they're like, I really like this thing called esports, and then we just kind of take a risk. And so it's like, I think that so many people, I love how so many people have that kind of story of like, I started as in engineering or something, and suddenly I'm here like working in esports. So it's great. Yeah. Especially, yeah.
And like Medic was like, that's not just a tag. That like the LEC caster. He was literally working as a physician or physician adjacent, which is wild. But anyway, let's talk about RNG. Let's not beat around the bush here. Were you yourself, Dagda, surprised at that they are your MSI representatives at like the beginning of the split, and then how has that surprise changed? Kind of once you got into the top three of okay, it's RNG, EDG, and FPX.
Yeah, so to start off, I'm going to apologize because as anyone who doesn't watch LPL might know, I pronounce the letter O or weird. I say it as or instead of R, so everyone slags me because they say RNG. It's an Irish thing, and I'm sorry. But moving past that, at the very start of the split, not a hope in hell. Nobody thought RNG was going to be able to do it. They were like, look, we lost Uzi spring 2020. Xiaohu, their mid laner, was like, we couldn't find a top laner in time. He goes to top lane, and we're just like, right, well, here comes the gradual descent continuing from RNG. Because if you actually look at their last couple of splits, they went from Worlds to not making it, Worlds semis to not making out of groups, to then barely making it into playoffs to not making it into playoffs for the first time in 5 years.
Yeah.
And then it got to like, oh God, this is not looking good coming into spring 2021. But they've been fantastic. They've kind of found this nice little system where they figured out how to play around Xiaohu in the top lane. He's super good at kind of understanding how he wants to build and control those side lanes. And from there, they've managed to pick themselves up where for most of the split, it was kind of EDG and RNG trying to see if they could fight for control of that top spot. And eventually, when we got towards the end of the split, RNG just barely nabbed it. And coming into playoffs then, there was still a lot of questions around them. Because as you were saying, EDG, FPX suddenly kind of came out of nowhere to look really, really good.
Like midway through the split, they really figured it out.
Yeah, exactly. So it was kind of a bit of a surprise, to be honest, that we ended up in a situation where FPX were looking strong. RNG were looking as strong as they were as well. And EDG too, because a lot of people at the start of the split were like, hell, look, Clear Love might be coming back into the jungle. Everyone was excited about that. And that was quickly, everyone forgot about it because they're like, damn, this team's kind of killing, especially when they got Viper across from the LCK even as well. So yeah, I think there was a lot of surprises coming into the split. And anyone who was worth their salt was not going to be like, by the time we get to the end of the split, it'll be RNG, FPX, and EDG who are taking all the top spots.
And that's the beauty of the LPL is that the fluidity, for lack of a better word, in the standings. So what about RNG? You talked about playing through Xiaohu in the top lane. It seems like he's found, a bit of a home there. I feel like many teams that go to represent their regions at MSI, they can't be that one-dimensional. So what else about them makes them worthy to carry the mantle?
Yeah, so definitely before this, they were quite one-dimensional. And if you actually look at our playoffs round 4 in FPX versus RNG, FPX just realized, hey, look, RNG only have this style. They just know how to play around Xiaohu. And basically the way that would work is they'd pick some sort of carry in the top lane, like to quote Frostgurin, Xiaohu's the best Lucian top in the world. Like, he's absolutely insane on it. But he'd love, like, picks like Gnar, like the Jays. These things where I was like, cool, I'm just going to... He's, like, actually played Tristana top, Orianna top, and Syndra top as well. So, like, this guy was all about, like, hey, look, we're just going to play to push this goddamn tower. We're going to take it super quick with a Rift Herald, and then just open up the map and allow us to do these crazy map movements. And that was basically the game plan from the get-go for RNG. And what FPX realized in round 4 was like, hey, look, the whole system, although it's built around Xiaohu, the two foundations are Ming and Wei, the jungler and the support. So if you can actually get these guys both kind of shut down in the early stages, it means Xiaohu doesn't get the resources and his actual laning phase isn't the strongest. It's that he gets all the extra support that comes up to him, and then he's just really smart at playing the map. So what FPX realized was we'll go in, we'll invade, we'll make sure that Wei is shut down. They kind of built the draft in a way that Ming was forced to play into the bot side of the map and couldn't really roam to help Xiaohu, and they absolutely butchered them. It wasn't even close. It was like an insanely quick 3-0, and we were like...
That series was sad to watch.
Yeah, it was really sad. And especially when we're coming into our finals and we're like, we want this to be hype, we want this to be good, and we're just looking at that last series, we're like, this is not going to look good, is it? This is going to be 3-0. I'm going to be going home and I'm going to be like, right, well, I guess I'll have a beer in the bath to make myself feel better for what's going to happen. But this is the thing, it was like, this is not going to go well. So eventually we kind of were like, okay, well, RNG started to open up a different style. They were like, hang on a second, this isn't going to work just playing around Xiaohu. And they went to start playing around Gala in the bot side. And we'd seen it a little bit in the regular split, and it didn't look good. Like, they got absolutely demolished by JDG when they tried it, and instantly they're just like, no, this is not how we're playing. Yeah, screw that. We'll just stick to the other style. And I think they end up going back to it though for playoffs, and I think it was like, if you look at the stats for Gala, it was like he went from like 50% first blood participation in the regular split to like 86% in playoffs. Like, they just fully went, okay, cool, Xiaohu, peace out, you're on your own, buddy, enjoy your Gragas, we're gonna go bot side. And it worked out really well. Like, and I think that's what caught FPX off to a certain extent as well. They were like, this isn't the same RNG we played against. And now coming into MSI, I'm like, at least we've got multiple different styles, right? We can have RNG play heavily through Xiaohu, like we saw in a couple of like game 5s in playoffs, or they can still play through this bottom side of the map and just kind of use the juggernaut that is Ming in that bot lane to help set up Gala, the AD carry, for success.
So if RNG have shown these two kind of clear defined styles where it's play through top, play through bot. Is the only place that teams really have left to attack Cryin now? Is he even a player that is particularly attackable? Because he plays very kind of safe zone control, wave clear style champions. Is he someone that can really be all that exploited?
Yeah, it's kind of two things, because I think definitely the weakest player on the team is Cryin, but I don't know, as you said, like how exploitable he is. I actually think the most exploitable player was what FPX pointed out was Wei. Like, Wei is a really, really smart jungler. He's really good, but if you're able to gang up on him, he just doesn't have a good time. He doesn't really know how to get himself back into the field. He then can't influence bot side. He can't influence top lane either. And then both game plans very quickly fall apart for RNG. And that's exactly what FPX showed, was like, hey, if we can get like a AD carry that's just going to be safe in the bot side, we can have a support that can roam in, like something like a Rel or an Alistair. We can have Olaf or Udyr, obviously, which were the big ones that they just kept invading in on top of them. Hecarim as well. And they're just like, cool, we just beat you. Like, we just outnumber you. You're done for. So I think that's kind of ways that teams can definitely look to abuse RNG, is trying to just shut down the system that kind of stems from Wei, or even just trying to hold Ming into that bottom lane. Because if you end up taking away stuff like Kai'Sa or, you know, any of these kind of AD carries that can get control of that bot side easy and like push in, get priority, Ming just can't go anywhere. He's just stuck in that bottom lane. And it means that then again, there's no support for Xiaohu, there's no support going elsewhere. And that really starts to hurt RNG in the long run.
Now do you think that, so you kind of know, what am I trying to say here? Do you think that RNG actually are kind of the top team? Like, do you think that they are the best team to come out of the LPL right now? Or is it just a matter of, they kind of just figured out how to not get smacked around by FPX, who, to me, it looks like just the talent on that roster is superior. This is not to dog on RNG, but just pound for pound, they look like the more talented squad. Do you think this is a fair representation of, okay, this is the best we've got, here we go?
So it's really awkward to say, because I think I tweeted out, I was like, FPX for me, back when they had Bo, were like the best team. Like, they were unstoppable. Like, it was disgusting. Like, Bo came in as like his second series, set the record for the most kills in the LPL we had that split. He got 16 kills on Olaf. Like, the dude just took over. Sheesh. And it was really sad to see that he was obviously taken off. There was a whole fiasco around him. And then we had Beishuan come in. And I felt bad for Beishuan, because this dude was a streamer that had gone, hey, I'm going to give pro playing a go. Oh, no. And then it's like, cool, I'm going to join the LDL team. Like, just kind of baby steps. I'll get started. And then he was on the team for like 3 weeks, and they're like, buddy, you're going to the main team. So this guy came in, was like, so even you're watching him, and he was just like, he was basically still very solo queue. He was like, I'm going to look after me. I don't care about the good of the team. Like, yes, I could go and help this guy push in a wave, but my Krugs are up, and, I got to go carry the game. I'm really sorry. Yeah. So, and I don't blame him. He was new, and it just was a bad time. And you could kind of see that the team didn't function because Beishuan wasn't able to support them in the same way. And then when Tien came back, I was like, oh, okay, Tien actually looks really, really good. But unfortunately for like the playoffs, both him and LWX really had a bad time. Like, the entire series, just they did not look good. So I think if I was going to say like the best team that we had to offer, it really felt like it was that like quick stint where we saw like the FPX just absolutely insane. They were the unstoppable team. But I do think if like we're looking at a team that's the smartest and the best to play in the map, 100% that's RNG. Like, these guys, they're incredible. And I think that's what's going to catch a lot of people off guard, right? Because when you think of LPL, people are like, top esports and the FPXs, we're going to kill you and make sure you killed again the second you step off the fountain. That's not how RNG plays. They're one of the slowest teams. They like to play through the side lanes. They like to play through Xiaohu. And it's more so about, hey, look, we're controlling these waves and this map. And then suddenly we caught you off guard because there's like 5 of us here and we've all caught you with your pants down and we're just going to turn this in a favor.
Right.
That's kind of interesting then. Because if they're kind of the macro team hailing from the LPL, which is not, perhaps a little unfairly, I think the kind of stereotype of, the LPL's all really stupid players, but they're really good at fighting, so they just win, is kind of like outdated. It's not actually how the LPL plays a lot of the time. It's just sort of an easy blanket term to describe them. But if you're saying that RNG are this kind of more methodical, cerebral team, it's going to be really interesting watching them match up into the representatives that we have coming to MSI, because we have Damwon, who we'll touch on a little bit later, who are just absolutely terrifying, and just like thinking about them gives me a fear that I can't quite like explain. But then you have
just don't think about them.
No,
it's like if I don't see them, they don't see me type of thing.
Eyes are firmly closed. Damwon Gaming cannot smell my fear if I do not look at them. But anyway, like the matchup of RNG into specifically Mad Lions is going to be something that I'm really interested about, because Mad are wonderful boys, wonderful people, very good players, but they often have some slightly kind of scatty team fighting. Like they'll just kind of pick fights that they shouldn't necessarily win, but they will sometimes win out, whether it's on like Kazi's insane positioning or a really, really good engage from Kaiser or something like that. And I think that's a matchup that I'll be really curious to see flesh out, just because like they've kind of swapped styles almost. Like RNG is playing the style that you'd normally expect from Europe, and then Europe is playing the style that you would normally expect from the LPL.
Yeah, I'm really interested, because obviously everyone's saying that the finals is going to be LPL versus LCK. And I'm really interested to see how this RNG, seeing how, like you said, they're a little bit more methodical, a little more slower, how they're going to face up against a team like Damwon that is just so good at like
everything.
Their fundamentals, this is probably one of the best teams we've seen in terms of like just they have all the fundamentals down, and they have incredibly mechanical players. Like they will lane kingdom you no matter where you are, and they have Canyon. Like Canyon was one of is the best jungler in the world as far as I'm concerned. But from your perspective, how do you think that matchup will go between RNG and like and Damwon? I'm kind of curious to see what you think of that.
I'm gonna give you the two sides. I'm gonna give the optimist first. So what I think.
Okay.
So the way that I think that RNG has any hope in hell of winning is like, okay, we do basically what we saw in the regular split. It's like, hey, look, Ming comes out, he works with Wei, they play through Xiaohu on the top side, and they body Con. Like I think if anyone I'm looking at, like Con can play a little bit over aggressive in lane. He's not always. He can overextend at times, and I think that's where maybe RNG can make these plays happen. And that's where I'm like slightly optimistic, where if they can get these early Rift Towers, turn that into a top lane tower, and then RNG start to get the ball rolling, they're very comfortable when they get into that position. And as I said, they're not like, you know, if you look at like FPX and top esports, they averaged like a kill a minute was their average champion kills for the season. I think you're looking at like basically half that, or maybe like 0.6 of that essentially for RNG. Like they are much more about, hey, we're going to outposition you map wise. So if we come back then to like the part I'm actually worried about, which is what I kind of hinted at earlier, I think the biggest problem for RNG is like if you end up with a team that's like really good at playing through their jungle and trying to shut down Wei, making sure that Ming doesn't have that opportunity to move around the map, you don't really get to play the game as RNG. And I think that's the biggest worry for me, is I feel like specifically Damwon are so damn good at this style that it just feels like a natural kind of counter to RNG. And I think that's where I'm struggling to kind of see a world where RNG are able to take it. Now, obviously, I hope I'm surprised. And I'm going to like 100% be supporting the lads, and I'll be rooting and screaming for them. But it's just, it feels very hard when I look at like, hey, you know, like it's very easy for them to move in as a 3-man unit to invade with Canyon. Like, I feel like that's where the biggest struggle for RNG is going to be.
Yeah, like it's that whole thing of do I do this with my heart or with my mind? Because it's like your heart, you're like, for me, it's like, oh, you know, we can, like, somebody can upset them. Maybe they underestimate a team or something. Like when I think of, like, for example, Cloud9, because I'm from NA, it's like, oh, Cloud9's got some great, like you know, Blabber's really good, and Sven and Vulcan are so consistent in the bottom lane, and then I look over at
4 players to even mention Perks. That's how deep this team is.
Exactly. We have Perks who, like, this year, I think a lot of people are like, oh, you know, he's really good still. Like, he hasn't lost a step in terms of his mechanics and whatever, but his shot calling and his leadership has really shown through with this Cloud9 team. But I'm like, yeah, we look great this year. These are great representatives. And I look over and it's Damwon. I'm like, oh, like I don't know what to do, right? Like even with the LEC, right? I'm really excited to see this new team come from the LEC, but oh my god, when you look at Damwon and just how complete they are, it's like.
Oh no!
Yeah.
We'll see you at Worlds, boys. We'll see you at Worlds. But then again, like we say that it's going to be like everyone's kind of expecting it to be a Damwon RNG final. At least from your perspective, Dagda, is that as much of a given as everyone says it is? Like, is it? Do you think it's a guarantee that RNG will make the finals?
I sound like I'm being a bit of a prick saying it, but yeah.
No, you make your region.
That's the honest answer. That's the right answer.
I think, yes. Like, I think Damwon are absolutely phenomenal. I think RNG as well they're so consistently good, right? There's like been one or two series where they try something new and it hasn't worked out, but like there's a reason. I think they only dropped 2 series, I think it was, the entirety of LPL, and you play 16 series. Like, that's insane. Like, these guys were absolute monsters. And you saw the way they bodied FPX as well when they got the lead. Like, these guys are very collected when they get a lead. And they're very smart with how they play the map. So even when we've seen them fall behind, they can still pull off these insane comebacks. Like, they'll just sneak a Baron. You'll get some nutty TP coming in from Xiaohu. Or like, honestly, I think Ming is probably the unsung hero of this team. He is... If you're ever watching a team fight for RNG, I would just recommend watch Ming. Like, his engages are incredible. His positioning is impeccable. The decision making on like who he needs to target is so good as well. But I think when you look at the rest of the teams going, I don't see where they match up to 100%. I think there's like, as you said, when I'm at lines, sometimes they just kind of, take the wheel. Let's see where this goes. Hope for the best. Yep. And I think that's definitely exploitable. I think when we look towards Cloud9, I think definitely with Perks coming into the roster, the macro has gotten to a certain extent better. But I still think, again, you're kind of looking at like there is clearly defined early game mistakes that are being made that teams that both for sure. that RNG and Damwon will capitalize on. And I think from that respect, I do think it'll be the two giants in the finals. The only caveat I will say to this though is like 11.9 looks so different. Like even because I'm not able to actually play a huge amount of solo queue while I'm here, so like I'm hearing like tidbits and I'm just like, there's a who in the jungle now? What? Yeah. Just like, this kind of stuff. Yes. Yeah, exactly. So I'm kind of like, you know what, especially for teams like in Europe who are usually the guys that are very quick at, and in NA as well, very quick at picking up on the meta and stuff like that, potentially they can find a couple of upsets or, have a hidden pick that no one has really figured out. But I do think, over the course of MSI, especially with how long the games are, these things tend to get figured out fairly quickly. And then we tend to go back towards the teams like the Damwons and the RNGs that are able to play that style, but just with more macro and honestly, in some positions, just better laners as well.
On the note of patch 11.9, I would just like to, I'm going to address my camera directly here. I would just like to say a thank you to the Riot Games Balance team for nerfing Hecarim and nerfing Chemtank, because I don't play very much League. I don't have a massive amount of time and I'm also very, very bad at it. So like not always the most fun experience to play League when you suck at it. But I'm a mid laner when I do play, and I play Lux, who is not the most mobile champion in the world. And to just be sitting in mid lane, minding my own business, farming my wave, and then suddenly a 4 million mile per hour horse comes speeding out of the river at me. It's horrifying. And like, it was kind of making the pro meta stale. Like, it was a lot of kind of Hecarim, Udyr, Lilia. Which one of these three champions is going to get picked? The pro scene's
been pretty stale in general, though, right? Like, I think that like we've seen pretty much the same stuff across all 4 major regions now. Like, I think that like although like the priority's been different, the same champions have been like kind of there. So I'm really glad to see that like Hecarim. It's not fun. Like, it doesn't look real when I see him running around with Chemtank and Deadman.
These observers are trolling. Like, they winded up at kind of speed, man.
Oh my god!
Yeah, I didn't think that the most like exciting and diverse bit of playoff League of Legends I would see was like Perks playing 5 different champions in the mid lane over the course of a 5-game series.
Or Wukong.
Like, oh shoot, that's neither Syndra nor Orianna. That's crazy, man.
Yeah, like when we saw Wukong in the top lane for Armut, in their series against Rogue, I'm like, yo, a different champion, sick,
That's crazy.
Yeah, no, we'll see what happens. I do like the diversity that we're gonna get with this new patch that's coming in for MSI, but I don't know if anyone will deviate. We'll see. I mean, I don't know. I'm not too hopeful. I'm sure the matches will be exciting, but I don't know if the meta and the picks will be as crazy. But hey, sometimes it's like that in League. So what can you do?
Now looking at the rest, and I was really happy to hear that you are potentially getting to cast MSI, which means you've whether you have done it or not, or you are going to learn a lot more about potentially other teams. And I mean, how much research have you done on maybe any kind of just zooming out from RNG?
Literally had the call like 2 hours ago, so I've done like nothing. Yeah, so it has not been I've gone absolutely nothing. I think the most I've done was like I literally looked at RNG's group and I was like, oh yeah, like looking is like BioPanther. He's been to Worlds before. I recognize the name. I recognize Pabu as well for the team, and then obviously you got like the lads coming over UOL as well. And it was like that's kind of the extent to where I was like, oh yeah, it's basically the same guys, less gadget for UOL, and that's the extent of how I've gone. I have been in full like. I need to detox from League of Legends once.
As you should.
Yeah, I think everybody needs to do that sometimes.
Is it time for Hank's CB LOL corner? Is this where this was going?
That's what I was thinking.
Corner?
No, I mean, look, I'm American, but I'm also half Brazilian. I was born there, and so I'm really happy for my boys in Pain Gaming. I think their ceiling is very, very high. I think they've got if they were in RNG's group, I wouldn't give them a prayer, but they are in, they're in, I think the easiest group to win. And that's not even to flame, not to win, to qualify. That's not even to flame Mad Lions, because I think they are the best team in that group. But like the other three just look kind of, right? Like I'm just saying that, look, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility, right? I mean, the TCL, the Istanbul Wildcats team, I don't know a ton about them. But Turkey has seen a little bit of an exodus of talent. But look, they still look really strong. I think, gosh, what's the other? Mad Lions, Pain, TCL, and
PSG Talon.
PSG Talon, and they've got their substitution issues.
They had to bring a substitute for Unified.
So if there is a year where Brazil makes it into the Rumble, only to go 0-whatever once they face all these major region teams plus UOL, I think this could be it. I don't know. Yeah.
Hey, I actually had to do some research.
CB LOL corner.
No, I actually had to do some research on Pain because I chose Tinones as one of the players to watch.
Yes, sir.
I mean, he and BRTT are crazy. Like he has Tinones has a 10.6 KDA during the spring split, which is like not a lot of players have like a double-digit KDA by the end of the season, right? And
that's like Chovy KDA down.
Yeah,
he only died 19 times.
Yeah, no, it's because he plays these like very facilitatory mid lanes, right? The TF Galio, like he's out there just racking up assist, right? And then they play through either top or bot. But yeah, Tinone's the same guy that if y'all remember when Kaboom pulled off that upset against Alliance in the group stages way back in 2014, he was the one that was just memeing on Froggen on Ahri. Way back when, same dude. Because Brazilian players don't really make it out of Brazil, but that's all right. But anywho,
man. No, that made me.
I feel old.
That made me sick. God. Okay.
But Dagda, before we let you go here, for with RNG, I mean, you mentioned kind of that if there is a player to exploit, it might be crying in the mid lane, but there's no such thing as kind of a weak side mid. We call that a control mage, which I think is kind of funny. But,
at me harder, dude.
I like that.
But no, that's what I always say when because I always play jungle and support, and when they're like, "Oh, you want to play mid, Hank?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'll play. Yeah, weak side mid. Just
side mid.
Play a Nivea. Don't touch anything until level 6. Just make sure the waves don't crash, and I don't know, maybe I'll be useful later." But are there any? I mean, we kind of talked about kind of just broader predictions. Do you see anything? I don't know, anything spicy coming out of MS, like any dark horse picks, anything for what do you think a realistic prediction for RNG is?
I see RNG getting to the finals. I'm not sure about a dark horse, but again, like because the meta is changing so much, it becomes super interesting, right? To see how it's all going to pair out. Like, I've seen Lee Sins now going into lanes. I've seen like Perks practicing in mid. I've seen people playing in top lane. Like, there's obviously your Dianas and your Darius jungles, and I've even heard Chemtank Zed jungle. Like, there's been some absolutely insane things coming out of the jungle. So I'm not going to try and get anything offline.
Oh no,
Chemtank Zed.
Yeah, I've
that
seen
gave me a visceral reaction.
Yeah, it's just like happening? So I don't know what's happening right now. Just like I was sitting in my happy 11.6 bubble where I was like, I know Hecarim, I know Udyr, and then I just finished playoffs and I'm just like, who broke this? What did you do?
Why is Morgana and Darius in the jungle?
Yeah, I was just like,
what's going on?
So yeah, I think certainly because there's just so much nuttiness going on right now. I actually I nearly think that plays into RNG to a certain extent as well, because like as I said, we've seen like Shehu plays everything. He's played Tristana top, Syndra top, Orianna top, Lucian top. Like he's a big fan of the Jace. Like he loves flexible. These more heavy styles in top lane, but it's, as you're saying, super flexible. And I think that's where maybe you can see that flexibility come through, because obviously this guy's been an RNG mid laner for 5 years before going to the top lane, so I think they do have a lot of flexibility there. Even like Cryin is if you see Renekton picked for RNG, it's actually going to Cryin in the mid lane. It just never goes top for a show. Like, they are super flexible with their drafts, so I think if you do have a meta that allows for a lot of these crazy picks, and you've got guys who are super comfortable with flexing that, I think you end up in like some kind of crazy spots with RNG. But maybe, again, that could help them. Or it just helps some other team to absolutely kick the crap out of them, and I have no idea it's going to be.
What I would give to get a backdoor look at some of these scrims and some of this.
I know.
It's going to be a mess. There's just going to be some stuff getting picked in those games.
Yeah. I was excited, and then he said, unironically, Chemtank Zed in the jungle.
Unironically, full with his chest.
And now I'm counting down the days until May 6th. All right, Tyler, Meg, anything from y'all before we let the good man go to bed?
I think we're good.
I think we're good to go. I now know a lot more about RNG than I did when we started this podcast, which is very helpful.
Well, Dagda, hey, thank you so much for being here. Seriously, giving us a lot of insight. I hope that, to the viewers, to give them kind of a how I pitched it was like, oh, if I'm going to hop into Discord to watch MSI with my boys, and I don't really know anything, but nobody knows anything about the Eastern teams, I want to be the smart one. I think if they get through the 30 minutes of this episode, I think they will be the smart ones, and that's what what we were hoping for. So seriously, thank you so much for your time.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure.
So with that will wrap part 1 of episode 19 of the Critical Strike podcast. In part 2, a very special guest by the name of One Chronicler to talk about the inevitable, ever-growing sun that will consume all reality and leave us in a nihilistic existence that is Damwon Gaming. And on that note, I hope you have a great rest of your week. Welcome back, everyone. It's part 2 of episode 19 of the Critical Strike podcast. Out of the other side of the time warp, we are here with the LCK's very own Chronicler. Casted the finals of, or wait, not the finals, but it was the finals. It was Gen G. See, but that goes to show you how steamrolly the playoffs were for the team that we are talking about today, and that is Damwon Kia, we being myself, Enrique Demore, Meg K, Tyler Escara, joined by Chronicler. First of all, thank you for being here. How are you? And tell us about those playoffs before we talk MSI for Damwon.
Yeah, I'm really good. I'm just about really settled in Korea at this point in time, because there's a lot of practicalities that come with moving to a different country, especially one where you don't speak the language. But the rest of the team has been incredibly helpful. So that's been great. My Korean lesson's also starting in a couple of weeks, so I'm excited for that. That's going to be very, very nice. Playoffs were... Well, finals were not great. That was a bit unfortunate. But I think the first rounds were actually a lot more interesting than expected. But those were like the teams that don't really matter. And then one person also got a little bit overexcited and voted for Gen G in the finals. And then they got stomped 3-0. So that person was me.
Nice.
That wasn't great.
Oh, man.
But
at least you stuck to your guns,
Exactly.
I still stand by that call, even though it was there was a different timeline in which Game 2 went differently. But Damwon Kia is just too good, which will be a running theme I think, throughout the rest of the conversation.
Pretty much.
So what was, I guess, your... Let's talk about kind of the... Since we're here, the bad, if you will. Because as you were talking about, and as just is common sense, yes, they're kind of consensus the best team in the world. They have arguably the best player in the world in the strongest position, as you put it when we were off air. Canyon in the jungle, making jungle canyons, not jungle gaps. The jokes write themselves. What is it about... whether it was Damwon specifically or Gen G specifically that made you say, you know what, actually Gen G have a shot here? Was it more, okay, Damwon have this little, hole in their armor? Or were Gen G just, I don't know, they PayPal'd you?
It was a combination of Gen G playing really well in their semis against T1. BDD in particular had a stellar performance, and Showmaker has looked not his usual self. Like, he's still really, really good, but he got mid-gap by Lava, right? Like that's where everyone goes like a little bit like I don't know what that was. And I think that the semis against Damwon, or against Hanwha Life rather, from Damwon was very unimpressive, and not in the usual ways where the early game is a little slow, but they made really disrespectful calls, didn't play according to the priority and stuff like that. I thought Gen G could punish it. And I think if you go into game number 2, there's a couple of plays that you can pinpoint where Clid rather just tilts. Like he makes a misplay and then he tilts and then they lose that game. And I think if that game gets won by Gen G, you might have a different final. I'm pretty sure with the forms of the team on the day, Damwon would have still won, but it could have been closer. But after that, they lost against like a Renekton and Italy comp with a better skating team fight comp. It was just a disaster, and then we don't even need to talk about game number 3. It was not good.
It just I feel like Gen G could have done a service to the rest of the world by just making them look like a tiny bit less completely and utterly unbeatable. Like, Fredit Brion tried it earlier in the year. Like, Fredit Brion were like, no, it's David versus Goliath, we're coming up, we're going to take him on. And then they managed to get like an insane win. And then Gen G could have opened the gates for the rest of the world to be like, Damwon aren't unbeatable, you can do this. And they just got absolutely mauled.
Yeah. I think, it's just one of those ones where, if anything, it gives them at least a little bit of confidence. Like, a little bit. Now that they're looking at them and their form coming out from the playoffs, they're just like,
oh
my God.
Because the real problem for me is that, a lot of people aren't really hype on Gen G, and I think that's fair. They're a team with very pronounced weaknesses and strengths, but they're still, they made quarterfinals in Worlds really easily. And yes, they got stomped by G2, but G2 is also kind of a natural predator for classic LCK teams, which is definitely what Gen G is, right? So they're not a team to get excited about, but they're still a really, really strong individual level team, and they just got stomped. It was just very unfortunate.
That's kind of an interesting point then, because obviously MSI isn't really the best demonstration of a region's strength. It's the demonstration of the strength of the region's best team, which in the case of the LCK, when your best team has just absolutely hammered every single other team in the region, doesn't really tell you much about how good the region is. Kind of looking forward a little bit to future international competition, more specifically to Worlds this year, how do you think Korea is shaping up? Because there's been a lot of discourse around Korea's washed. So many of Korea's teams are washed just because Damwon's beating them all. Is that more of a tribute to Korea's weakness or to Damwon's strength?
I think it's something that people really want to be true. They want to believe that Korea's washed, right? But I think that we've seen throughout the split that a lot of teams have had up and down performances in every single region, right? I think that you can see this in the form of G2 at the moment, right? You can see this in the up and downs that teams like EDG, FPX all have had. Even RNG, right? They got kicked to lower bracket pretty decisively. And I think that's just also a little bit due to the meta at the moment that can be a bit flippy or a bit snowbally because of how strong Drakes are. I think that teams like Gen G, T1, Hanwha Life, if they go to Worlds, they're getting quarters again. There's no way they don't make it out of groups. I mean, you might make an argument for Hanwha Life if they get into a really strong group, but generally none of those teams are, I think, going to struggle making it out. In terms of actual contenders, no, it's just DWG Kia. In terms of how the teams are currently looking, right? No other team would actually be able to make a run, I think. I think T1 might be able to do it depending on how the summer shapes up. I think Gen G, if they like tweak their roster a little bit. I wouldn't be able to tell you where, but I think they have the raw talent available. Hanwha Life, same story, right? Like these teams are still really good, but no, DWG Kia is just leaps and bounds behind, ahead of everyone else. But I don't think the region is really slowing down. It's just that one team is so much better that it makes everyone else look silly.
Yeah.
Right. It's kind of weird, like, because if you look at any of the regions in like the world, or major regions at least, it feels like there are that like kind of, there's like a pretty like close race for the top spot, right? But when you look at Korea, it's like you said, all the teams. It's not that the teams are bad. It's just that Damwon is literally on a different tier compared to everyone else. But like that's why when we look, like other people look at that region, it's like, wow, Korea must be like falling off, because we're so used to seeing, you know, Cloud9, TSM, TL all battling really, really closely. And then in Europe, it's even like better, right? You have G2, you have so many teams.
It's really entertaining. It's been really good.
Yeah, it is. And then you look at Korea and it's like, wow, it must be because Korea is falling off. But no, it's just because Damwon is on that other, like, spectral plane almost compared to the other teams. But yeah, no, I think that Korea, when you pit them against other regions as well, I think that we'll be able to see that level of disparity maybe.
Yeah,
but
I think like the international matchup that I'm most excited for is Rogue versus Genji. If we get to see that, I think that'll be like as a European fan, I'm not sure I'm going to be too happy about the results of that matchup. I think I might need to go cry for a little bit after we watch that one, but I will be very curious to see it, at least. Just maybe not the happiest about the outcome.
Mm. And Chronicler, you'd mentioned kind of this like very, for lack of a better word, Korean play style, right? You prioritize fundamentals, you prioritize playing slow, right? Just taking care of you. You break the game down into your phases, right? Renekton Italy gets you through the early game. You pick a nice scaling team comp. You take certain skirmishes at, you know, preordained power spikes and stuff, which I think probably, to me anyway, that has been at least a part of what has contributed to this Korea's washed mentality, is because the style is much kind of slower. Just the team that takes care of their fundamentals better is going to win in that region. But do you think that, and you were talking about how G2 and their playstyle were this, you know, kind of natural counter, natural predator. Do you think that applies to Damwon and their style?
No. That's the problem, right? Like, that's why I said this as well on the broadcast of LCK. I thought that with the form of the teams at the time, that Genji could make it to MSI, right? That they could win the final. And I firmly believe that, even though it turned out to be a very clowny call. But I still think that even if that would have happened, I would have preferred Damwon to go. And the reason is because they're not exploitable, right? And they're somewhat exploitable in terms of playstyle, because they still don't play very early game oriented, which is something that, of course, LPL is extremely notorious for. I got a lot more LPL because the time zone is good here, and I mean, we all know what happens in the LPL. It's very fun to watch. Although as a Korean caster, obviously, it also makes me pull my hair out. But we have LCK draft, so it balances out. That's why I get my dose of frustration. But that's the thing. I think Genji, you can, from the get-go, like, you know what they're going to draft, right? They're not going to surprise you. You know what they're going to do. They might have some mild variations, but you 100% know like what is coming at what time. T1 showed this as well in their semis. Very, very predictable. But DWG Kia, like, they don't really give a damn. They pull out like the weirdest pocket picks in multiple lanes.
The draft is just something else for this team.
It's really, and you can see this in things like, you need to ban Senna against that team, not because Ghost. I mean, Ghost is a great Senna, don't get me wrong, but the real problem is Beryl, because Beryl is the most unique champions played on the team as a support, right? And it's just, you need to ban Senna, because if you give Beryl farm, like, it's.
I have
No, Senna's like your petri dish that you could just let your support go insane.
Yeah.
Because,
yeah, it's literally to enable it. Yeah.
And the fact that I can go in a professional league, the best team in the world, the team that we think is just going to clap everyone, and their support has 2 games on Heimerdinger.
Oh yeah, but that's actually,
come on.
Heimer Senna is.
It's nuts.
That's what I firmly believe. That's why Heimerdinger was nerfed. Because I don't. No, I'm not even joking. Like,
no, I know you're not. It's ridiculous.
That what we saw was the win condition for that series against NG was Ruler, right? Because Ruler is a god, and he might be an over-aggressive god that always gets caught between the same two turrets. But if you don't shut him down, he will also single-handedly win you the game. And stuff like that Heimerdinger, the fact that Barrow can play that and they can completely win a laning phase against one of the strongest AD carries in the world, like it speaks so much to the versatility of that team. And I'm still like a classic fan who just wants to see Barrow on roaming supports because his roams are godlike. But if you shove him in lane, like it doesn't, he will always find a counter pick, right? And then the problem is that Damwon Kia's opening would be that bot lane, because you're not going to win versus Showmaker. You're not going to win versus Canyon, obviously. Top lane's irrelevant because Khan's playing Lulu or Cyan, right? Like, and carrying through that is possible, but it's really hard. And I'm saying it facetiously, but I kind of believe that it is the case. It's just the team is so versatile, and that's why internationally I'd be terrified of them, because they're not just really good players. They're also really smart, and they can always identify what they need to do, both in a draft and also in a game.
Yeah, their flexibility is what scares me the most.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
It's like that confidence to not only to be like, yeah, just give me like Lucian top, just whatever, or like like anything, literally anything, and it's that confidence to know that we're gonna beat you with this.
It's G2-esque, right?
Yep. Exactly. I was about to say that. That like it reminds me of the peak G2.
All the fundamentals of your greatest LCK teams of all time, with just the insanity and the like induced tilt on the other side of, well, they clearly know something I don't. What in God's green earth is going on? You're just reacting that a G2 would bring.
Yeah, like I remember peak G2 back when they were about to like do the whole like when everyone thought they were gonna sweep all the events and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, that was the biggest fear. It's like, what are they going to do next?
Yeah, what are they going to pull out? You never know.
Yeah, exactly.
And then FPX out G2'd them.
Yeah. But that's...
Yeah.
That's, I think, the fundamental problem with Damwon is that even though I think they have their weaknesses in game, is that they will always come out of a draft with a way to win the game, no matter what the situation is. And they are so incredibly smart about how they play that even though the odds are they should not be winning, I don't think there's any team at Worlds that's clean enough to not make any mistakes against Damwon Kia. And if you make mistakes against them, no matter the game state, no matter the comps, they'll find a way. It's just inevitable.
So we're all kind of like the Thanos snap that is Damwon Gaming, the unavoidable, inevitable truth that is getting absolutely steamrolled by Damwon Gaming. So, like, how do Damwon lose? And I'm not saying how does a team beat Damwon, because I don't think that's it. I think if Damwon lose, some of it has to kind of be done on their terms. Something has to go wrong for them in order for them to lose.
Who's the Iron Man that takes the stones away? Like what can be that moment? If there is a moment like that.
I mean, I don't think any team is like Damwon Kia is not unbeatable either. I think they're going to win MSI. I think they're the best team by far, and they're going to stomp everyone. But they have openings, right? Like I said, I think the early game can be fairly weak, although they have shown against in a lot of matches that they can play respectful, but they also, especially against LCK teams that they've beaten before, and I'm afraid that this might happen in groups as well, considering it's best of one. There's situations where they can definitely fall behind early. And I think that bot lane can be a cause of worry. I think that Ghost at his peak was like the best. Don't give me resources, just leave me alone 1v2 and I will still stay even and be fine.
The weak side god, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just not... They've been a little bit more rusty. They've been getting like a double killed in bot lane. Of course, LCK bot lanes are pretty cracked, but still it's something you kind of want to avoid. And I think that the combination of like the early game combined with perceivable weakness in bot side, and I think Khan can be a liability, although I don't see teams taking that as a goal, because to actually shut down Khan, I think you can definitely do it, but you need such heavy focus. And then if you focus them heavily on top side, then the rest of the map is getting... It's not worth it because of how good Drakes are. Like they're just going to pick up all the Drakes and then, or one or two Drakes, and then they'll scale or they'll find their opening, and it's just... Yeah.
With Khan specifically, I'm curious about this because I'll talk about I'll ask you what was the perception of Khan when he came back to the LCK, and how has that changed? over the course of the split.
I think a lot of people thought it was a downgrade, and now that I've seen him for the entire split, I will say he's a downgrade, but that's because Nuguri is the best top laner in the world.
That's a pretty brutal bar, yeah.
Like that's the main reason. I think that Khan, in terms of raw carry potential, I don't think he's the best top in the LCK anymore. I think if you look at players like Keen, like Summit, yes, they're inconsistent, but like their peaks are insane. Players like Zeus as well that have really impressed me in the debut. I think when it comes to role carrying are up there, but Khan's experience, his complete willingness to play whatever the team needs him to play, and his untiltable attitude are the main things that really impressed me this split, and why I think it's a slight downgrade. I think Khan doesn't have the raw star power that Nuguri has, but I also don't think he will be an actual liability in MSI though. Like I don't think he's going to get horrendously outplayed or outlaned by a lot of teams. He might be focused. He might die a couple of times in lane, but the man will do his job in team fights no matter what the situation may be.
Mm-hmm. Who do you think's the? I know he said they're going to stop everyone, but in your eyes, who do you think would be the greatest challenge for them? Is it clearly RNG, or could it be someone else? Like, who do you think?
I'd say it's RNG just because of the strength of the regions. Because I haven't caught, like, it's been hard for me to watch the other regions. I think that Europe is the best to watch anything outside of LCS, and LCS is.
Escalated.
Yeah, I mean,
please be gentle when you talk about
LCS is obviously competitively not the reason that I think is the most important to watch. When you look at like the highest level of performance of the major regions. And I think that just through the sheer strength of the region, I'd have to say RNG. I think that Mad Lions are a really cool team. I'm friends with like one of the assistant. I don't know if he's still assistant coach, if you like, because I think that all moved up because Peter Dunn left for EG. So I don't know the exact specifics of that, but I think they're a really cool team. I think their approach to like how they've built their rookies is amazing. But I also don't know if they're like if they actually got what it takes to hold a candle to like regions like the LPL, like the LCK. And that for me is a TBD. If they do really well, like I wouldn't be surprised at all. I think they're incredibly talented players. And I think it's very deserved that they won the LEC, but it's got to be RNG because I think the depth in LPL is still better than the LCK. If you look at like how many insane teams they have, I think the LCK is just a lot more consistent, but that consistency comes at the cost of excitement and honing your like middle top of the pack teams basically.
Yeah, I was gonna say that the LPL, like the RNG, had to go through some pretty tough like teams, like really really tough teams, and
some of
for them to
twice.
come out, yeah, like it's crazy to think that because we were talking about it with Dagda, how it's like they didn't look that great coming into it, and then they even got dropped into the lower bracket, and so for them to like do that entire roundabout and get through all those teams and then win in a way that probably nobody really expected, right? Like I'm excited to see RNG at MSI for sure. Like I think that they are, because Dam 1, you know what you're getting in the best possible way.
Yeah.
Like you know what's gonna happen. Like I don't even need to look, right? But with RNG, I'm really excited to see how they play. For Mad Lions too, like you said, you don't know. We don't know how if they have what it takes. Also because of like the experience factor too. I think that's going to be a big thing. I think they're really young. They're exciting, but also that also comes with that kind of inexperience and the mistakes that come with it. And like you said, Dam 1's just going to punish you every single little mistake that you do. Suddenly you're dead or something. So yeah, we know what's happening with Dam 1 for sure. But in terms of everything else, I think it should be really exciting. And maybe, hey, like, have you ever? Is there any chance that there's possibly, because we've seen this with top teams before in terms of complacency, like underestimating teams, underestimating competition. Do you think that could ever be a thing with Dam 1, or do you think that they're just really,
would it
really
even matter if it was?
Well,
yeah,
like I said, I think safe odds are they just like they just win everything consistently. Up until like, unless they make huge blunders in draft, but that's not something that they traditionally do, right? Where they don't give themselves a single out. And even in games where they do like the second game of finals, and you can argue that it was Gen G losing that more so, but still you got to actually play that out the way that they did to still have a chance.
Yeah.
I'd personally say that I don't expect them to lose, and even if they like lose early games, then they'll still find a way to win regardless. And even if they do lose a best of one left or right, I don't think it's really going to matter. I don't think complacency is really... I think they were in the middle, like they had a little bit of a slump in the middle of the split, but like on their current form. No, I mean, Showmaker went like... I know it's solo queue, but if a guy goes like 31-5 in like a Challenger EU West lobby like that's
your mental is gotta be like.
There's a couple of like UK Challenger players who like UK and like ERL Challenger players. Imagine you load up, you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have a nice day in solo queue. I'm just gonna queue up for some fun mid lane games, and then you look
Showmaker
across the
Canyon
and
on the other team.
Showmaker, and there was a I can't remember whose lobby it was in. Some poor guy. He wasn't a pro or anything. He was just a high elo player. He was playing opposite Showmaker, and I think it was on Reckless's stream. And someone on his team accused him of getting mid gap.
Getting mid gap,
and he was like,
the guy's like,
"What do you mean?
What do you want? He's a world champion. What do you want from me?"
Oh god,
it's so funny.
That's the league community in a nutshell, right? Everyone besides the world champion is bad.
Imagine saying that to someone with a straight face. You got
welcome to EUS, man. That's just how it is over here.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And there was a little bit of a rivalry developing with G2 between Damwon and them, which I think is really cool. That international rivalries like that just form organically how they do.
Finally.
And there were rumblings, and I guess I just real quick wanted to get kind of your insight on it because you're closer to the scene, that Damwon were really, really, really jonesing to play G2 once they got there. Are they, I don't know, is that something you've like heard? Are they disappointed, or is that not even like a thing?
Honestly, you'd have to ask Ashley Kang, because I think she's been the main propagator of like, not propagator, but like the main conduit, of course, of because obviously she's the one who got the initial interviews where the rivalry kind of came from. I do think, without getting too much into the players themselves, I think it's in the playstyle of Damwon, right? Like, we already called them Peak G2, and that was a transition that started when they got beaten by G2 in 2019. And we've since seen them take on the best aspects of the LEC, which is like really inventive strategies and like really
flexibility.
like a high level of flexibility, while still adhering to like Korean macro, right? And like Korean playstyle, which is terrifying.
Spooky.
And I think that I'm sure they would have loved to play G2, but I think it was already like a week or more. No, not a week, like 2 weeks before playoffs, I think, where I think it was Beryl, if I remember correctly, but I might be wrong there. Said in an interview like, I would love to play G2, but I don't know if they're making MSI.
Yes, I was about to mention that he in an interview he's like, it'd be great, but I don't think they're winning the LEC.
Yeah.
So it's like,
It was jokes, because when he said that, everyone was like, he's just being stupid. He doesn't know what he's talking about. It's G2. Of course they're going to win. And then he, like, savanted it so hard. Like, Beryl was he broke G2's mental, and they were like, well, now we have to lose. The best support in the world has predicted that we will lose. We must do it.
G2.
I mean, that's an interesting discussion, right? Whether or not Beryl is the best support in the world. Because there's you could also make an argument for carrier, at least specifically within the LCK.
Right.
Or I think players like Ming have been heralded as
Ming
well.
Ming is nutty.
Yeah. So obviously, I think when it comes to the versatility as well as the roaming style that we've seen from Beryl, it's very clear that he and Ghost are still ready to put some people in their place.
It's actually kind of a shame, because, like, I really, really want to see, like, the Beryl versus Ming, that's a hard sentence to say 3 times fast. The Beryl versus Ming matchup is, like, it's a really interesting one, and it's one that I would, like, be really curious to see. But you can't see it properly, because Beryl has Canyon, so, like, you never get an accurate look at what that matchup's like, because especially someone like Ming, who's so focused on roaming, he's paired up with Wei, who is a very good jungler, but he's not Canyon.
But he's not
and you can't get... I don't feel like we can ever really get an accurate representation of what a support's going to be like when the support that they're playing into is A, insanely good, and B, has Canyon on his team. Like, I'm so afraid of this damn roster. I don't...
Yeah, I actually think that the matchup that I was personally hoping for was Nuggery, FPX versus Damwon. Like that would have. I think that would have been cooler even than G2 Damwon. At least Perks is still there, right? Like Perks is still ready to carry the play. So that'll be good.
The one king.
Although it's really cool, right? Because Perks also appeared on the LCK finals. Like he sent a voice message, right? So I think that's like a really fun, interesting rivalry. I think those games are going to be really cool. But no, I wanted to see Nuggery. It is. I want to see Nuggery play against or Viper, because I'm so happy for Viper. Like, sure, they didn't make it, but that man has had it wasn't even a renaissance. Even when he was on Hanwha Life and his team was like bottom 2, the man was still like stomping lanes like he had no business doing.
Really good. Yeah,
it's really good.
No, that return home for Nuggery, like coming in and like in those, and I love it because it's literally the opposite color of like blue versus, and he just comes over and he's like, well, I'm here. What are we gonna do? Like,
did you miss me?
Yeah, did you miss me? It's like almost like a wrestling promo.
Instead, we get Khan versus Fudge, which is an equally exciting matchup.
Yeah,
okay, look, maybe a little bit.
Khan is, I think, the funniest play in the LCK. Like that man, I really hope, because Jason is there, right? And Jason is Go Translator. So I hope that they win. Yeah. And I hope we get Khan interviews, and I hope the Worlds get treated to those, because they're just...
I hope he brings the was it the pickle glasses?
Yeah, he had like the tiny glasses that him and Showmaker wore.
Yeah, those... For the interview, I can't remember which series it was, I absolutely lost it. He had those, and he had some that were like, I can't remember if I'm misremembering this or not, but I think either he or Showmaker had like Pepe the Frog.
Yeah, he had
glasses.
Well.
No,
those. It was like a whole
I want
mask.
them.
It was crazy.
Yeah, I hope to God they've packed those in their suitcase, because how toxic is it? You get like. Some team gets their skulls caved in by this guy, and then he just rocks up to the post-game interview. He's like, Wagwan, what's going on? I've got a mask, I'm ready to go.
I feel tilted already. If I see that on the screen and I just lost, it's like, man, where's my sub at?
Man, get me home. I'm flying out of Iceland. I can't do this.
I'm going over it, man.
Oh boy.
Well, that's going to do it for us. Chronicler, thank you so much for being here. We wish you all the best in your transition in Korea. I hope I meant to mention at the top of like it's cool you have like that outlet of the Pog poetry, as it was called on the episode of that the LCK podcast.
I can't believe they embraced that part of my personality. That doesn't happen very often.
They embraced it twice. On two different episodes.
I think we had 3 in the end.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. Not 100% certain.
Okay.
I have the memory of a goldfish, so maybe I'm correcting you.
That makes
just
2 of us.
wrong. That's entirely possible.
But no, I'm glad you got that outlet, that your transition's been good, and we can't wait to see you in the summer. Don't be a stranger. And for everyone here, we are available on, can I get it? YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Pocket Cast, Google Play. That's it, right? I got it.
Nailed it.
Oh, gosh, I'm so good at this game. For everyone.
And YouTube.
And YouTube. Yes, on YouTube. For Tyler Esquera, for Meg K, for Chronicler, again, thank you so much for being here. I've been Henrique Demore, and we will see you next week. Hey, y'all, for more of the Critical Strike podcast, make sure to check us out on YouTube and like and subscribe for more esports content.